Hello and welcome back to the Campbell County Trunk Show presented by Postmark LaFollette right here on WLAF. As always, I'm your host Brad Smitty. Tonight we head into episode 4 of the Promised Land series and we continue our conversation with Boomer Winfrey at the Coal Creek Miners Museum. We pick up where we left off in episode 3 by talking about strip mining and where the industry is now in this area. And in the second part we talk about what the Coal Creek Miners Museum actually is all about, and that's coal miners. Now remember, if you didn't catch episode 3 or any of our prior episodes, you can go to postmarklafollette.org and click on Trunk Show, or you can go to WLAF and go to their YouTube channel and catch all of our past episodes streaming online. As always, before we go over to Boomer's interview, we want to encourage you all to share your stories about coal miners or any history of the area, or your stories or your family history. The information will be on the next page and we invite you to reach out to us. But without further ado, let's go ahead and turn this over to Boomer. Let's talk a little bit about the history in the area, about from the 1950s with strip mining until today.
By the late 1950s, just about all the underground mines in Tennessee, with the exception of the big one up at Tackett Creek in Claiborne County, which was a union mine, and it was huge, had about 300 men, and they had too much invested in that underground operation to give it up. But just about all the other underground mines have been shut down. They couldn't compete with the strip mines. The strip mines were producing the coal, and the land company had no concern about, the land company that owned the land never really traditionally had any concern about the future of their, they had it clear cut of timber, to the point where all the timber, useful timber, was gone. Then they had it mined. As long as those royalty checks were coming in to their stockholders, they were happy. Didn't matter what the future of that company was going to be 30 years, 40 years down the line. We are not going to be here. We'll let those people worry about it. And, surely something else will come along. And sure enough, they were beginning to find a little natural gas here and there, they could tap into. But they really didn't worry too much about what the effects of surface mining would be on the surface of the land itself. That was a fallacy that a lot of people in the strip mine business had, was that, well, we're not really hurting these mountains. What they were hurting were the people who lived down the valleys below. And the environmental effect of strip mining was felt the most by the people who lived in those valleys. That was a fallacy that a lot of people in the strip mine business had, was that, well, we're not really hurting these mountains. What they were hurting were the people who lived down the valleys below. And the environmental effect of strip mining was felt the most by the people who lived in those valleys, because as all that stuff came down the mountainside and filled up the stream beds, what had been farms and homesteads that were above the floodplain suddenly became farms and homesteads that were in the floodplain. And so you had, really in 1970, you had this massive, very, very wet year, wet spring, and you had these massive floods all over the Appalachian region here in Tennessee. And you had, homes washed away up in Newcomb, and homes washed away in New River. You had a flash flood that came down out of Beech Grove and caught a guy on a bridge. His car was stalled, and he was trying to get it jumped off, and this flash flood came down and washed him and his car away and drowned him. And later on found that it was because a strip pit up on the mountainside had broken from the heavy water, heavy rain, and it all come down as a flash. And all of a sudden you had people begin to speak out about strip mining and say, this is enough. And Tennessee was the first state in the country to pass state surface mining regulatory laws. Very first one. 1972. And it was due to the efforts of these old coal miners and their families. And you had all kinds of people going down to Nashville. People from Elk Valley, the bakers from Elk Valley, and people like that going to Nashville. Tommy Hatmaker from Bryceville, going and speaking to legislators, and talking from the heart, because these people knew what they were talking about. They lived it. The other result of the mechanization of the coal industry, of course, was that the underground mines got fewer and fewer. If they were young miners and they still wanted to make a living mining coal, they moved to Eastern Kentucky or West Virginia or somewhere else. Or they stayed around here if they wanted to make a living doing something else. Maybe they were able to get a job in Oak Ridge, one of the plants, or get a job in one of the syrup factories, the syrup factory in LaFollette, or A&S Steel, in Carroll, or someplace like that, other than mining. So this museum here in Lake City, the Coal Creek Miners Museum, really celebrates a past.
And thanks, Boomer, for providing the perfect segue into the last part of tonight's episode, which is where we really focus on the miner aspect of the Coal Creek Miners Museum as Boomer breaks down what it's all about. So with that, I'm going to turn it right back to Boomer and let him tell you all about what it is they do.
Well, and exactly hit it right on the nose. This is called the Coal Creek Miners Museum for a reason, and that is that the industry, they do enough self-promotion themselves. They don't need somebody to promote them, but it's not really the industry per se that's important. As far as the people who live in this area, coal mining, it's only real donation to the well-being of East Tennessee is the people that worked in the mines, the people that depended on it for a living, that made the industry what it was, that worked to improve the safety and improve the conditions of the mines, whether it be through unionization or organizing or rebellion or just loud mouths, the people who, like I say, a lot of the people here is the first time they ever had a chance to have a real job. They were farmers before the coal industry came in, coal mining came in. And then that's the first time they ever had a paying job. The fact that they could do that, they developed a skill that they could carry with them. It took a long time for people to realize how much damage, for instance, that black lung would do to people. The miners would work, and only when they got really too sick to work anymore and then it was the 1960s before doctors and scientists finally pinpointed exactly the reason was black lung from mining coal. But the miners, that as hard a job as it was, as hard a work as it was, I've talked to old retired coal miners that said, I've never done anything else. I loved it. And you realize that what they're talking about, it was hard work, it was honest work in their viewpoint, they could be proud of. There was a camaraderie among miners, coal miners, you were a coal miner, you were a coal miner. It made you different from everybody else. And it's one of the things that made it easy for the unions to organize, is that the miners, if they had that sense of camaraderie, it made dealing with some of the problems in the communities and everything easier. And it was a brotherhood. It was a brotherhood. And in more recent years, a sisterhood. As it's turned out, you've got now women miners. And that's a whole other story about, how women got the right to work in the mines. But it was a point of pride for a lot of these guys that were ex-miners that I've talked to and gotten to know through the years. They were proud of what they did for a living. They were coal miners. It was honest work. It was hard work. And didn't matter that they may have killed them, may have killed them with black lung or, other things. and dangerous as all get out. And still, it was a way of making a living they could be proud of, and more proud than, say, working as a bouncer at a bar or something like that. So that is a large part of it. And the coal miners had such a tremendous role to play in the history of this whole region, you know, whether it be for the Coal Creek War or rebellion, these railroads that, you know, opened up this whole area to development, you know. They wouldn't have been here if there wasn't any coal. Why would they run a railroad into the wilderness of the Cumberland Mountains if there wasn't a reason for it? LaFollette wouldn't exist if it hadn't been for coal and the coal miners. Lake City, Coal Creek wouldn't exist. Jellicoe, none of those places would exist if it weren't for the coal that was found in these hills. They'd just be rural areas, you know, small one town, you know, one county seat town. That'd be about it. It played such an important role in the development, the settling, and you know, the eventual what's ended up. You know, a lot changed in Campbell County and Anderson County and Claiborne and Union when they built North Dam. They built the dam, formed a lake, flooded places like the old town of Lewiston over there, and Union County is completely buried. Flooded Grantsboro, original Grantsboro, was under, you know, was under the lake. They changed the nature of this whole area forever, but one of the reasons they built that dam where they did, you know, there's a lot of rivers they could have chose for the first TVA dam. Why'd they choose the Clinch River, you know, here? Part of it was because you already had the infrastructure. You had railroads coming right by, you know, within a few miles of the dam site. They would haul all that materials and equipment on them and make it easy to build a dam there. And because you had all these tremendous, you know, wealth of men, out of work men, thanks to the Depression, a lot of them had experience working in mines, working with heavy machinery and equipment. And so you had a ready supply of labor. You had a railroad that made it easy. So it made sense. Let's build North Dam when we did. And, you know, Coal Creek, they had to get some way to get the equipment, the materials going out to the dam site from the railroad. So they built a little freeway between Coal Creek and the dam site. Became the North Freeway, and eventually US 441. And now that road starts in Lake City and goes to Miami, Florida. You know, it was created because of the need to get the stuff to the dam site. The result of that dam being built changed the flavor and the character of this area forever. You know, lakefront homes, recreation, that's the big business now to a certain degree in Campbell County and Anderson. I don't think that dam would have been built where it was if it hadn't been for the existence of the coal mines and the coal miners in this area and the railroad and the things that had all developed as a result of that mining. So it all was interconnected. And, you know, it's something that we want to try to celebrate here at this museum in Lake City is, you know, the miners, their sacrifices. I mean, not just the miners, but the wives and the children. The wives sacrificed as much as the miners did. You know, I've heard people who lived in women who lived up in Briceville. It was you know, the heyday of its mining days. So, you know, we never really knew what white sheets and white clothing was like, because, you know, we dried our clothes on lines, so there was always so much coal dust in the air up there from the tipples and the trains going by that, you know, you'd wash your clothes and they'd be nice and white. You put them on the line to dry, you bring them back in, they'd be a little gray. just a little bit of tinge of gray to them. So that the women were breathing that air too. You know, they were living and dying with their men's ability to take care of the family. And, you know, so it wasn't just the coal miners that made the sacrifice. It was the coal miners and their whole family, their entire families that, you know, need to be honored and recognized for what they've done for this region and for the country. You know, there's a lot, and the region goes beyond just a couple of counties here. You know, it goes all the way to Pennsylvania, and the stories are the same everywhere. It's been a tremendous sacrifice, and you know the story is it may be ending, but like I say, it's probably not ending completely. There's still another chapter in the book of coal that hadn't been written yet. That'd be the super high technology chapter when it's done with a handful of people. But you know there'll have to be a whole lot of people hired to build all that machinery that's going to do that. So you know there'll still be a demand there. But I think that one of the reasons that I've really supported and worked hard to try to get this museum going here is that we don't want people to forget what's been sacrificed. We don't want people to forget just how hard things were for these men and women that, you know, basically built this country. This country was built with the steam engine, the railroad, the steamship, and until fairly recently, most of that was powered by coal. You know, and the electricity we use to heat our homes was powered by coal. And you know, to this day, you know, much of what we have developed and built in this country, you know, was built and developed on the shoulders of coal miners. You know, that's my story. I'm sticking to it as far as the importance of the museum here.
Well, I think that goes to say the adaptability, right? Yeah. That you're talking about here of the people and how everybody sacrificed and why it means so much. It's a badge of honor to be a coal mining family.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And I think that's the thing is we're looking at, like, even when we were talking about the land and how it bounced back and how people bounced back, we were talking to Bill Stanley in a previous episode, who's very involved with Cora, and how these reclaimed strip mines are now becoming habitat for elk and different animals. And like you're saying with North Dam, as places like Anderson and Campbell adapt, that's kind of the way that we're going with tourism. And 47% of land in Campbell County is actually public land now. And it's just this continuous adaptability. And you know, one thing we want to do is share like the knowledge that you have. And so if people, like you mentioned before, 1918, you know, there was the Spanish flu, and now we've been dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic. But if people wanted to know more about the Coal Creek Miners Museum, is it open? Do you have a website? Like, how can people learn more?
We have a website. I don't know. I guess you just look it up, you know, Coal Creek Miners Museum, Google it, and you find it. This museum right now are open just 3 days a week, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday from 10 to 4. But once more people get vaccinated and things get more opened up by later on this spring, early summer, we'll probably be back to our full. We were being open 6 days a week, Tuesday through Sunday, and I expect we'll be able to get back to that here fairly soon. As we've got an elevator now that goes to the upper floor. We've just been kind of waiting for the pandemic to cool off just a little bit before we go up there and start renovating. And you know, the museum now tells the story of the early days of coal mining. You know, from the very beginnings in Coal Creek to the Coal Creek War, the early mine disasters at Frederick and Cross Mountain, and a little bit about, you know, how coal mining affected how it was carried out during the pick and shovel days. You know, they got artifacts and tools there to explain all that. What we want to do upstairs is bring it up, you know, tell the story of the ups and downs of the coal industry from the early 1900s through the First and Second World Wars and into the 1950s, and the slow automation of the mining technology to the point where, you know, hundreds of men could be replaced by a few men, you know, with machinery, and how that changed the face of the industry, and changed the standard of living in these coal communities. You know, as fewer and fewer people could get jobs, you know, what's happened to some of the communities that used to be thriving and have a lot of people in them, they've become depopulated to a certain degree, but you know, how that is all played into the story that, you know, coal has to tell, and, you know, and what it relates to. And I'm excited for what we'll be doing on the upstairs to bring things up to the 21st century, you know. But, you know, probably early summer before we get the thing upstairs completely renovated, opened up, but hopefully it won't take too long. You know, there's actually a driving trail that you can take, you know, that starts at the museum, and people can drive from here. They can drive up to Fort Anderson, for instance, and walk and see the trench line, and walk and see the cannon pointed down into the gap between the gap and the Coal Creek. They can drive on up to Bryceville, see the old, you know, the old Methodist church, once a Welsh Anglican church sitting on the hillside there overlooking the town. There's a cemetery up there where a lot of the victims of the Cross Mountain Mine are buried. You can drive down to Leach Cemetery and see the Fraterville Monument where the miners that died at Fraterville in 1902 are all buried together in a big circle around this monument, you know, memorializing them. And you can go beyond that. You can drive up to, you know, go up to Royal Blue on the old highway there, Carroll. Go right by what used to be the company store up there, the old I guess it was the Block Coal and Coke Company at one time. There at Block, there's the coke ovens up above LaFollette are still there. You know, there's the remnants of things around that, and you know, and I think there's a little museum, history museum there in Jellicoe, if I'm not mistaken, in the hardware store there. It focuses on Jellicoe history and has a lot about the train wreck, you know, the World War II and the coal mining history of the Jellicoe area. Although we're going to try to tell a lot more of that, you know, in our museum. Once we get the upstairs open up, we're going to have a lot more about the mining, you know, the mining that opened up in New River and Stony Fork and you know, up in Campbell County, because they were all, coal miners they might be from LaFollette, they might work in Lake City. They might be from Bryceville, and they might work in Jellicoe. It's where they get the jobs, you know. They would go where the jobs were available. So coal miners were not geographically always, you know, isolated in one area. A lot of times they had to move around where their jobs were. And I see it all as being one great big interconnected family.
Well, it's like so many people still do today. If you live in Campbell County, so many people travel out to work, and yeah, I mean it's part of every bit of the culture there. I mean, there's, you know, songs, music written about it. Mm-hmm. We have some original songs with the Postmark LaFollette that we're actually going to play in this episode. That's written about the coal mine, and I believe John Rice Irwin, did he not write?
He collected some songs. Yeah,
collected some songs.
Probably wrote one or two. There's John MacArthur and some of the people who perform at Louie Bluey, you know, festival have done they've written or they've collected coal mining songs and redone some of them, you know, to be more modernized. Of course, Bobby Fulcher, I'm sure, has collected enough coal mining songs to fill 4 or 5 albums full of them. He's been a song catcher as long as I can remember him. Yeah, it's a strong part of the culture around here, and it interrelates to so much else. You know, it's just like you know, you can't tell. They can't tell the story of the North Stand without talking a little bit about the coal mining, you know, and you can't tell the story of Civil War in this area, without it eventually leading to, you know, how the railroad came out from Knoxville and who was behind it, because it was a couple of Civil War generals that saw the possibility and the promise and found the funding to build the railroad out, and came back after they had served in the Union Army down here. It's all so interconnected. It's amazing. And mine safety, you know, that began with the Freighterville explosion and then still peaking to this day as far as mine safety techniques and rescue and everything. Even though there's not much demand for it right now, you know, it's still, there's still men working underground and there's still accidents that happen.
It's the legacy lives on, and it'll really never die. It's like you were saying, there's so much of it you kind of trip over it.
Exactly.
You know, there's so much here, no matter where you go. And Boomer, once again, I mean, thank you for taking the time to talk with us today. I've learned, as we were talking about a little bit before, so much about my own family, my own history, and like how things connected from people working in the coal mines to the shirt factories to, you know, A&S still, and it just connects so much, and that's the whole point of talking to people that know so much and are willing to give their time. So people got to come down to the Coal Creek Miner Museum, meet you, the staff. They got to learn about these things and these people, and
I'm sure encourage people to come down. You know, we're open now, you know, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday from 10 to 4, and we'll eventually expand it, you know, to more days here as the spring and weather warms up, I'm sure, and more people get immunized from COVID. But I'm excited for what we've got here and what we're going to have, and you know, the connection it has. And you know, our museum we've sponsored like Coal Miner Appreciation Day several times in the past, and you know, this music groups to come and perform, and we had them a couple of times at the middle school, and we had them down at the Clinch River Baptist Church one year. And they're usually fundraisers for the museum, but there are also opportunities for people who are from coal mining families to come in and be recognized and honored, you know. And so there's always a part of that. We always do try to invite coal miners, retired coal miners, and their families to come free of charge, no cover charge for them to come in and join us for a meal and a bit of music. And so hopefully we'll be able to start that again by next fall. You know, it's usually a traditional fall thing.
All right, folks, that's going to do it for tonight. I hope you enjoyed talking with Boomer. And we're going to be back with episode 5 of the Promised Land series. And remember, once again, you can check out and get all of our old episodes at postmarklafollette.org or on the WLAF YouTube channel. And in between now and then, we still want your feedback. We still want to hear from you. The Campbell County Trunk Show is for you, Campbell County. So on the next page, you're going to have information about how you can reach out to us, email, phone, however you want to do it. We just encourage you to reach out. Until then, we hope you keep digging into the history of this area along with us. Thank you so much for supporting the Campbell County Trunk Show and what we do. And once again, this is all for you and for our community. And we look forward to talking to you next week as we begin to explore the public lands in this area. And we also are going to talk about and think about a little bit more with Boomer what the Coal Creek War meant and how that transition kind of helped shape and affect where we are today with our public lands, tourism, and as we head into the second part of our Promised Land series. All right, thank you all once again.